Well, welcome everyone to the very first of 4 webinars within the Ideas and Conversations series. These webinars are proudly hosted by Bundaberg Regional Council and are planned to lead a community conversation towards the recovery work for our local arts industry. It's important that we acknowledge the traditional custodians on the many lands on which we gather today and pay our respects to the cultural knowledge and histories leading up to today. We also welcome any First Nations people joining us today and respect the cultural authority that they hold upon the lands of their traditional peoples and the commitment they have towards arts recovery for our region. The Bundaberg Regional Council area includes the traditional lands of the Tarrabalang, Gurang and Baili peoples, and we pay respects to the thousands of generations of continuous culture represented by the elders and this country. All webinars in the series will be viewed by our community panel who lead a conversation on the 5th, who will lead a conversation on the 5th of September. Now this will be to localise the valuable information that is shared today. This panel will include Di Wills, representing the performing arts, Phil Oakley representing visual arts, and Jess O'Neill representing arts education. So we thank Di, Phil and Jess for their commitment to the project. Now today's webinar is titled The Art of Positivity, and we are very, very lucky to be joined by 2 remarkable arts leaders, John Paul Fischbach and Liz O'Brien. So today, if you pop your screen, you can put them on gallery view so you can make sure that you can see them in full view. So John Paul Fischbach divides his time between personal creative projects and helping independent artists through the Auspicious Arts Incubator. He has a long history of producing and directing theatre, films, festivals, and site-specific events both nationally and internationally. Liz O'Brien is the principal coach and belief buster at the Auspicious Arts Incubator with over 20 years experience as a healthcare practitioner in the areas of traditional Chinese medicine, mindfulness, stress management, and meditation. She knows that when we are mentally, emotionally, and physically well, it is easier to be our best selves, whether that's at work, at home, or stuck in traffic. So towards the end of today's webinar, we will then open it up for a Q&A session with Liz and John Paul. And to participate in this Q&A, please press the raise hand button that you'll find on your screen, and then we can unmute your microphone and you will be able to then ask your question. So without holding you up any longer, I will now hand over to our wonderful presenters. Please welcome John Paul and Liz.
Right, there we go. We did it. So what we would love to do, that's a bit about Liz and I, what we'd love to do is just have a bit of a runaround to tell us what your artistic practice is. And then just so that we calibrate things the best, tell us whether you're consider yourself an established artist or just starting out. So Selena.
Can I just also ask, unless it's a issue with internet reception, it'd be great if we could see people's faces. We can see 4 of you, but no, 3 of you. But is everybody else able to, hello, that's nice, hello Rod. And there's somebody next to Rod who hasn't got a name, but you've got a pretty pink hair. Can you pop a name in your little box, please, so we know who you are? And Tina and JW and Reese and Angela, Tony, are they hiding? Come out wherever you are. It's nice to have faces, but otherwise we're going to kick off. So far away, John Paul.
So Selena, can you tell us what your artistic practice is?
Can everybody see me?
No.
No, we can hear you.
Okay. I don't know what's going on here. I'll fiddle around with that in a minute. But firstly, thanks, Robert, for the welcome. And I'd just like to acknowledge the songlines and everybody here. Artistic practices, well, I did it since I was a kid. Never followed through. I've got no degree or anything. I love writing, used to love poetry, used to be a bit of a sketcher back in my old days, but then when I had to grow up and go to work and became a mum, that kind of went out the window. But look, I work alongside many of these people within the Bundaberg Regional Art Gallery, and I'm very humbled and to do so. So yeah, I love walking into that place.
Gorgeous.
It's very inspiring. So just happy to be a part of this and support
Awesome.
as we can. And I'll try to get me up on screen. So there we
Okay, great. Okay, so in my little gallery, Trudy, you're next. What's your artistic practice?
Hi everyone, thanks. So my practice is I'm an independent curator, so that's predominantly, I suppose, my, if you want to call that an art form, I consider it storytelling. So I consider myself an artist, but I also wear a strong arts worker hat as well. So project management, as well as I'm a regional arts officer for the Wide Bay and Burnett. So I support a lot of artists in their endeavours and employ artists to do various different projects and things like that as well. So a few different hats.
Cool, cool. All right, Rebecca, you're up next.
Yes, hi. So I'm gallery director for Bundaberg Regional Gallery. So, and it's, yeah, thanks Selena for saying those lovely comments about coming into our gallery. So I guess my arts practice is really, it probably is at the moment around curation and direction really, but I guess that absolute passion for the visual arts. And I've sort of had a long history with that and a lot of association with the visual arts community. So yeah, so that's where my passion lies.
Cool, okay.
Thank you.
Then unfortunately, the next person in the gallery is sitting behind you. You've got a kind of a wire work screen with wheels. I can't see a name. Oh,
Hi.
Cynthia.
Yes, it's me.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you. Great to be in this new technology world and seeing you all in front of me. I wear a lot of hats, but I guess to put it in a nutshell, my latest passion is drawing labyrinths on our beaches. I'm very much into labyrinths. I'm also a drumming facilitator. In the past, I was a textile artist and I dabble in lots of different arts. Love Bragg, and they've been very good to us through the years. Love Bundaberg, so that's where I'm at. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Then we flip over. So once you unmute, seems like the name pops up. So next to Cynthia in my world is artistic goddess with a big stripe of burgundy hair. So if you unmute, Diane,
yes.
Great.
Yes, I'm just a local primary school music teacher, but I'm very interested in the arts in Bundaberg and like to support them however I can, and also very interested in the positivity side of things. So
cool. So then, Rod, are you here as an opera impresario or just in your in your other role?
No, I'm here as a general dog's body. So producer and arts manager, that'll do me.
Okay, cool. Robert, we know. Angela.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm a consumer of art with an interest in what you're going to talk about today.
Okay, cool. That's easy. Then we have Bundaberg Library Admin. I don't know who that is. Do you guys know who the library admin is? Perhaps we won't worry. Then I have Tony next. Tony's part of the Bundaberg team though, right? Yeah, okay. What about?
Sorry, I'm going to talk on behalf of Tony and Tina.
Okay.
So we're obviously a little bit limited with technology here. So I'm the only one with a webcam and audio, which probably says something about our office. So the other two are sitting in the background, so this side of me. I'll talk about Tony. So Tony is our marketing officer here for the galleries, but she also herself is a practicing artist and her partner is an artist as well. And
what art form?
So she's particularly a jewellery maker, but also she does a lot of graphic design work, so a lot of design, and Tony's responsible for our amazing design that comes out of the gallery as well. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful artist and beautiful person to work with.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
And,
thanks.
Yep, that's right. And when we get to Tina in the gallery, I'll be her as well. So
Well, Tina's next.
Tina's next, rightio. So Tina is our senior admin here, and I would say probably like Angela, you know, a consumer of the arts. So would you hold on a sec? I'm just going to do our very technical yell out. Are you happy with that? Right, yeah, she's happy with that. So yes, so that's yeah, so that's us.
Okay. Next up in my gallery is JW.
Hello. This is Jolene from Moncrief Entertainment Centre. So I work with Rodney, the beautiful Rodney, and I do all the marketing here for Moncrief. So that's promotion and community engagement as well.
Great. So Rod, that's it. Then henceforth you shall be known as the beautiful Rod Ainsworth.
I'm changing the business cards right now.
Good. Okay, next up I have Reese. It looks good, Reese. You look unmuted. Speak to us. Let's just try a test. Say something, anything.
Maybe he's nipped off somewhere. Maybe he'll come back. It's all right.
All right, then the last one in our gallery is Rachel.
Hi.
Sorry, I've just, I don't know if you can see, you guys, that Reese has sent us all a message in chat to say he's not sure if we can hear him. No, Reese, we can't hear you. Sounds like you can hear us, though.
Yeah. Okay, so while you sort that out, Reese, Rachel.
Hi, my name is Rachel. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Cool. I'm the technical officer at Bundaberg Regional Art Gallery. I'm also a sculptor. By trade, a welder, so I do a lot of metal art. But my role here at the gallery is to install artworks and maintain the gallery's collection.
Cool.
I love the fact, Rachel, that your name is Weldon and you're a welder.
Thank you.
That's amazing. You could, I mean, it's like a book, really. It's excellent. It's lovely to meet you all.
Great. All right, so I think, Liz, one of the things that we chatted about in terms of this idea of how do you stand in that place of positivity as an arts worker or an artist is to just accept the fact that as an artist, there's a level of vulnerability that's part of your life. You know, you're putting yourself out there. When you create something, you're you know, something that never existed before in the world, you've created it, and then you put it out there. And we have lots of artists who, some are afraid to put it out there, and some have no problem with putting it out there. So Liz, what happens when someone actually does that?
What it tends to do, whether you put it out there or whether you don't, sometimes even just the thought of putting something up or out creates the stress response. And that's often enough then to make somebody, you know, run for cover, because the other name for the stress response is fight or flight. Actually, it's fight or flight or freeze. And so when we're contemplating exposing ourselves, which is what it is, when you put something artistic out into the world, it's going to be viewed or listened to or whatever it happens to be. And that is often enough then to make people feel extremely vulnerable. And when we're exposed in that way, and it needn't be a bad vulnerability, I'm not saying that vulnerability is bad, but you know, it can often feel as if then you're opening yourself up to judgment and criticism. And then the stress response very naturally kicks in, because that's a protective physiological response to keep us safe from danger. And in this case, the danger, what we perceive to be the danger or the risk, is that fear of maybe being ridiculed or judged or people not liking it, or maybe even worse, I put it out there and nobody comes. And so that stress response then is what will often either make us procrastinate or hide, not do it. People who talk about wanting to do it and never quite doing it, or keeping small. They do it in a small way, but it's never really shared. And yet their urge is, and the longing is to share and put it out there.
Well, one of the things that we talk about in the work that we do with artists is to understand that anxiety is a layered thing. So when you're in a situation where there's restrictions, like the COVID-19 restrictions, or there's isolation, or there's situations where things got canceled, or you're living in a time of uncertainty, that those just layer up. And it makes it incredibly difficult to find that positivity, because you may be positive and believe in your art, but then you hit the next, I think, Liz, you described them as shells, that you hit the next shell, and then and you just keep going. And at a certain point, would you say that you just give up because there's too many shells to break through? It's just too hard.
Sometimes, and also some of those shells or layers feel out of our control. And that's often enough of a deterrent for people. It can make them feel powerless. And there are some things that aren't within our control. At the moment with COVID and lockdown, we've had to fit in, well, we are in Melbourne and you're in Bundy, but the thing is, you're all in your separate places. And so sometimes we just have to live with circumstances. And that can then affect our positivity, because if we feel powerless, then what that tends to do is to make us feel a bit negative sometimes, because when we feel that we don't have any agency, we don't have any control, then the tendency can often then just be to go, well, what's the point? And then we give up. And that's a negative mindset instead of a positive mindset. And we know over all the years we've worked with artists, don't we, John Paul, that it's that creative spark is fueled by positivity. It's that sense of wanting to come forward, not the negative sense of wanting to draw back.
Yeah. So what we thought we would do is just a fun, not necessarily fun, but a good exercise to get into this concept is we'll use our little breakout function, and we'll put everyone in, I think if we put everyone in 4 rooms, that puts 4 people per room. If we put everyone in 4 rooms to have a bit of a discussion about these layers of anxiety, these layers of stress, where do you see them? So for those of you that are arts workers and curators, where do you see those in trying to do your work? Where do you see those in the artists that you work with? So not all of you are practicing artists, but most of you are. So I'd like you to think about that. The idea we have for this whole session is woe is me. So in order to be in that position, as Liz was saying, there are layers to that. Your core being isn't woe is me. It's happened. It's happened because of different layers of stress and anxiety. So what we're going to do is devote 4 minutes to a bit of a discussion in small groups about, where do you see that? Where do you see stress? Where do you see stress and anxiety? If you can talk about what might be the triggers for that, what might be the situations that create that, and try to talk about how you feel when you feel that kind of shut down, that out of control. Liz, would you say?
That lack of agency, not being in control of it.
Yeah. Right. All right. So
give yourselves a minute each. Make sure that each person gets to say something. Make it succinct. But when you identify those triggers, make sure you give each person a chance to speak, because that's often where the processing is. But we often get the processing by hearing others and go, oh yeah, I recognise that. So share the minutes, the 4 minutes, you get a minute each.
All right. So fingers crossed. You should all just magically go into these rooms, and then I will pull you all back into this major group.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Before we discuss your conversations in your breakout rooms, the first thing we'd like you to do is just take a moment, reflect, feel in sort of how you're feeling in yourself on a scale of 0 to 10. If 0 is no stress and 10 is top of the scale, where is your stress level sitting at the moment? So just bite a mark in it. Out of 10, where is it sitting? And then we're going to invite you, whoever would like to just unmute by clicking on the little mute, unmute button icon. and just share with us, or would somebody like to be the speaker for their breakout room? And just share with us what came up as the sort of the key triggers. Fire away, Cynthia.
Gosh, when we realised we've only got 4 minutes, we have to speak really fast. And there were only really 2 of us speaking, so we did quite well. Look, for me, I'm at a 0 today because I've had a beautiful memorial labyrinth walk with a couple of people this morning. Then I went to Bagara. I had a coffee, which always relaxes me, and I was looking at this empty beach, and I had to draw another labyrinth. So I did this beautiful big turtle labyrinth on the beach, and as soon as I'd finished, there were people wanting to walk it. So for me, it's looking, and as Selena agreed as well, Selena was in my group, we're talking about work-life balance. So prioritizing our time, achieving something each day. So I guess compartmentalizing our days so that we have a bit of everything. We have a bit of me time, we have a bit of work time, we have our exercise. And I also mentioned to Selena that when I'm feeling stressed, I know that tomorrow is a totally different day, and I will have a different perspective on whatever issue I'm dealing with. I guess that comes with wisdom and having gone through trauma and so forth. I've personally have taught myself how to sort of cope with different things. So I look at my day, I have achievements, I have that time for myself, and yeah, every day is a new day. So I'm feeling very calm at the moment.
And
Thank
they're
you.
beautiful. Oh, they're beautiful observations, and the way you see it so balanced, and that tomorrow is a new opportunity. They're really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would Selena like to say anything? Would anybody from another group like to comment on it or share what you observed?
I'll jump in quickly, just because no one else is. So in terms of our group, Di was talking about, and I love this. She was talking about the fact that she works in a school. She's a teacher, and that she realised the stress was coming. She was found herself really stressed last term, and found that was exacerbated because she wasn't able to sing. And so once she worked out that she could sing to herself, that sort of helped to break the shell, I guess. And then Reese talked about putting it out there, as a, that putting something in the public eye is a real stress. Rachel said that she loves the disruption of that's not, she doesn't find that a stress at all. She loves putting her artwork out there. And my thing was about the regional isolation. That I find that as a shell, the ceiling that's hard to crack.
Gee, it's interesting. They're all different, and yet they're all similar, isn't it? They're all, I suppose, related to your art form or your role, and it's that stress. And then finding, I love the fact, Diane, that you found that it's singing. That's really beautiful. The same really as it was for Cynthia. It was about creating the labyrinth. It's these kind of meditative, creative practices, which we were going to talk about a little bit later, that are clearly the antidote to stress. And interestingly too, that how contagious stress can be. As I'm assuming that, Di, for you, the stress came probably from parents and children and all the unknowns of what's happening with COVID, and that stress becomes infectious, doesn't it? So we pick up on other people's stress.
Yeah, it was overnight. As soon as I realised that I wasn't singing, I didn't realise that I wasn't singing, and I sing all day. Like, that's as easy as breathing. I just sing to myself, but then all the rules were that we're not to sing, so I wasn't singing. And then I realised what it was, and overnight, the next day I started singing. Next minute I've got a concert planned. I've got all the kids. It just was the key. So
gorgeous, just gorgeous. Thank you, I love it. Who else would like to chip in from another breakout room? Who hasn't? Fire away, Trudy.
I can share a little bit from our group. So we talked about sort of 2 main aspects. So I suppose in my conversation with lots of artists, the financial concerns come up predominantly. That's the number one that I hear a lot. People who have been applying for, I know individuals that have applied for 6 or 8 different, COVID response funding opportunities in the arts and have been unsuccessful in all of them. So maintaining your positivity, in the face of no's, and that concern about what does the future mean, where's the money going to come from for our industry. Those conversations, what I'm having a lot. Then Jolene shared, that she works as a lifeline phone operator. I know there's a better word for it than that. I've just forgotten. And she said a lot of the anxiety that she's been listening to from people is the isolation, the challenge of that isolation. And then you put that in the context of the arts, and that can actually really be prohibitive to creativity. That can be difficult for people to do because they're sharing space intimately and intensely with other people, and that can cramp creativity at times because it brings with it a whole lot of personal challenges and things like that. So that was really the start of our conversation. I felt as though it's a big topic. We could have got really really into that.
It's meaty, isn't it, really? Thank you, that's great. And there was one last breakout room, wasn't there? Would anybody like to jump in?
That's probably ours. So I was with Robert. So we looked at the difference in the stresses for artists in the visual arts, which is obviously where I predominantly work, and the performing arts, Robert, and just that difference in, where artists, the stress points are in that. And we talked about, well, do you want to chip in with yours, Robert?
Yeah, we sort of just spoke briefly about the difference sort of when planning for different events like performing on stage. You may make some mistakes, but you do have the capacity to rely back and on your talent and somewhat hoodwink the audience, and they won't even be able to notice if there was a mistake. So that gives you some level of reassurance. Whereas with the visual arts, Beck was talking about having things that may sit, that has to be right the first time because it will sit on a wall for up to 6 weeks or even more, where people can continually go past and critique it, whereas only seeing things once and once only on stage.
More freedom in it.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So can I ask you all, just before we move into the next piece, having talked about the things that cause stress, whether it's your own or whether it's what you're aware of with the people you're working with and who are around you, how many people feel that their stress has been elevated, apart from Cynthia, who's a happy 0? How many people felt their stress levels rise as you began to either talk about it or hear other people? Can I just have a show of hands? Did your stress level increase? No, some did, some didn't. Rods did. Yep. A couple of nods, yeah. So, John Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do with the next piece?
Right. So I think that partly, we call this various forms of first aid. And I think one of the things that we're slack at in the arts as an industry is mental health first aid. We don't really have the tools. We just know that, you're an artist, you chose to be an artist, figure it out. So I think one of the challenges that we've got as an industry is to be better at that kind of first aid. So Liz is going to take us through an exercise that she uses all the time with artists that's really, really powerful. And it's about that kind of idea of perspective. That when you're in the middle of fight, flight, or freeze, you're in the middle of that. You have to acknowledge that you are now in the middle of that. So what's the first aid that you do to give you a sense that you're not trapped inside all these layers and inside all these shells? And there's various exercises, but the one that Liz is going to take you through is just stunningly beautiful. So I thought the best way to learn it is to do it. So she's willing to take you all through this exercise that you can do, and then please share it, do it with others. And it works really, really well to give you that sense of, okay, this is just stress. I'm just in this place of feeling lost, frozen, frightened. But that can change. And it's you that changes it. So when you do this exercise with her, it changes. But you did the change. It wasn't that the world did something. It isn't that Liz did something. It's actually that you did it. And I think that's the most powerful thing that we forget as artists, and that we forget that if you have these tools, if you have these first aid tools, you can do it.
And I like the fact that, as you're saying, John Paul, it's about that sense of agency, because when things get really tough, what happens when the stress response kicks in is that all those stress hormones course right through our bodies and bathe the brain as well. And when the brain is affected by the stress hormones, it actually begins to shrink. The parts of the brain that we need when we're facing some sort of dilemma they're the very parts that atrophy. So the prefrontal cortex, which is to do with clear thinking and decision making and big picture, and it also has some social regulation. The hippocampus, which is social regulation and memory and recollection, they both shrink. The part of the brain that grows is the amygdala. That's the part of the brain that is part of the old brain, and it's aggression and fear. So you can probably all recognise that if you're feeling stressed, you know, you can't see the wood for the trees. You don't know where to begin. You feel a bit paralysed or you feel overwhelmed. So because you're all artists or work with artists, so you certainly have an affinity to this, what the exercise that I'm going to take you through is really simple but really effective, because the mind can think about anything, anytime. It can worry about the future. It can chew over the past and recreate all the things that went wrong last time. But the body, the physical body, is always in the present moment. So if we can connect to the physical, what we're doing is we're shifting that perspective. So I'm going to use a very simple little technique called 5-4-3-2-1. And it's about connecting to your physical senses, which I think from the things that you shared with us, this isn't quite what JP and I planned, but we're going into improvisation now because I think this is going to be nicer for you guys. So I'm going to ask you then to look around where you are. And this is what's nice about this is you don't need anywhere special. Look around. We're using the 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, and hearing. Look around the room you're in. Choose 5 things to look at. Some things that are close to you, some things that are distant, but give it your full attention. And now, in the space that you're in, find 4 things that you can touch and actually touch them. Choose things of different textures. Feel their temperature, feel their texture. Explore them with your fingertips. You might want to close your eyes as you touch those things and see if you notice any difference in your experience. And then the next one is 3 things that you can hear. So if you've got noise cancelling headphones on, take them off for a second and listen to 3 sounds nearby or in the distance, but just let your attention rest on them. And now find 2 things around you that you can taste. So it might be a sip of water or coffee. It might be if you've got a mint or a fruit there, but notice it. Take a tiny bit and just notice the taste. And again, try it eyes open, eyes closed. And then the last one is, because we're down to 1, we've gone 5, 4, 3, 2. This last one can be, and you can move them around in any order, go with what's working for you, but either one thing that you can smell in your environment, or if you're in a very sterile environment and there isn't anything, you can ask yourself, what's one thing that I'm really good at? Because that shifts your perspective from being powerless to feeling, what are my strengths? And then I'll just ask you to return your attention to me. So what we did, because the body is always in the present, but the mind can go anywhere, when you were doing that, looking, smelling, touching, feeling, hearing, where was your attention? What were you focused on? Just raise your hand and unpress on yourself. You pointed to you, Selena, didn't you? Is that what you were doing? Yeah. Or you were focused on you, or you were focused on what else? If you were looking at something, where was your attention? Maybe we can unmute everybody while we're chatting. Who can do that for me, Rob? No, it's not Rob who's in control there. Who's in control of mute? That's right. So where was your attention if you were looking at something or listening to something?
On that thing.
On that thing. Spot on. So when your attention is on that thing, are you thinking about the thing you're worried about or stressed about? So what you're doing, this is a mindfulness exercise. You deliberately shifted your attention from the stuff in your head, which is valid. It's just that you can't hang out there all the time or you get drowned. So you gave yourself a little break. It's like we recharge our phone or we refresh the screen. When you shift your attention away, even briefly like that, onto something else, and then you come back to the problem, you've had a little reboot and you come back in recharged. So some people had higher stress, not everybody did, but some did. Those whose stress, they could feel it a bit elevated after talking about the stressors in your life. Do you feel calmer now? What's people's experience? Where are your stress levels? Have they dropped a wee bit? You can wave at me maybe, if it's hard to talk. So maybe I'll ask it as a yes.
I was going to say, I was one of those people that put my hand up before, that, you know, talking about stress makes me feel stressed. But yeah, it does. I mean, it's just that focus shift. So anything that can kind of calm the brain and the mind from spiraling into, you know, that sort of link, you know, the linkages that it makes. So yeah, it definitely had an impact on reducing that.
Yeah, it's a circuit breaker. That kind of an intervention, by connecting with the physical senses, it's exactly right. You're right. You just come back to it. It's like, so thank you, Trudy. Does anybody not notice any difference, or would you like to ask any questions about it? Does it make sense to you as an intervention you could use for yourself, a little bit of first aid to get you back on track? Yeah.
I think the key really is it's that circuit breaker. So as you know, there's lots of different, you know, this is one of thousands of techniques. And we all know, and we've all heard, breathe. Everyone says breathe, you know, and we don't. I know that. I know I'm supposed to do that. I know that's supposed to help, but we don't do it. But that's one of those great circuit breakers. We know that as you're working from home, it's critical that you get outside. You know that it's critical that you take a break and you stand up and you change your posture after whatever your rhythm is, 45 minutes, 90 minutes. But those are the circuit breakers that Liz is talking about. Anytime you can break that. And what's hard is when you get into that woe is me mindset, it is very hard to break out. So I would encourage you, for yourselves and the artists you work with, is to find insert a circuit breaker and say, yep, that just sucks. Okay, let's do something. Before we can chat, before we can go on to the next thing, let's do something. So it's something physical, use the senses, breathe, walk. Any of those circuit breakers are really, really great.
And so simple, because you've always got them.
Yeah.
The senses, the body's always with you. So you're never, it's not like, oh, I haven't got the right gear, or I'm not on that holiday in Bali. It's like, I can do this right now. That's what I love about it. It's so powerful because it's so immediate.
So where we wanted to go from here was just a bit of a discussion about the fact that it's the mindfulness of success that we want for all artists. And it's knowing that you have the ability to be successful, that your art is successful, that when you create stuff, it's magical. And when you stand in that place, you're standing in that place of agency, and you're standing in that place of power. So one of the keys to that, absolutely the keys to that, is to understand that it's fair enough to talk about the problems. Yep, there are obstacles, there are problems. You know, you're talking about all the funding applications and got turned down for another one. And you can spiral in that. And as artists, we're emotional beings. So the emotion that you've got when you're not on the positive is a negative. So sometimes we create out of that negative, and sometimes we do. But what I think our job is to shift that to the positive side. So what I ask artists to do all the time is to write down, give me a list of the things that aren't working. What's not working? So you know, for exercise, I would have you guys just write down 2 things in your life that is not working. Whether you're an artist or not working, or not an artist, there are probably 2 things in your life that aren't working for you the way you would like them to work. So just really quickly, what are 2 things? Yep, just jot those down. A couple of words, a bullet point. 2 things that aren't working. Okay, then what I'd like you to do is just to the right of that thing that's not working, think about how you would like it to be instead. So who can give me an example of one thing that's not working? Just throw one out there.
I'll be brave. I'll throw one out there. Future planning. So the COVID, you know, atmosphere that we've been through, I really was hoping I'd take the opportunity to get my career focused. Future planning, get things in track, and I just feel as though, you know, my attention keeps getting pulled in all different directions. So for me, career planning has not been working for me.
Perfect. So we're going to stick with future planning, the first thing you use. So what we typically do is we have this thing that's not working. So we try to invent a process to get us out of that. And what happens then is we come up with all the obstacles and all the reasons why we haven't done future planning and all the things that got in the way. But as artists, we have a secret power. We have the most incredible imaginations of anybody. And one of the reasons Liz loves working with all the artists that we work with is because we do this really well. We can imagine something different. And truly, a lot of the population can't do that. If you ask them to imagine something, they're like, but we can. So the exercise is, what's not working? Future planning. But what you can do is imagine, how would you like it to be instead? So I'm going to make this up for you, Trudy, but I would imagine it's something like, I've got things planned. I feel calm. I know where I'm heading. Things are organized. Things are running in a sequence. That's how you'd like it to be instead. What else would you add to how you would rather it be?
Yeah, goal setting. Having a really clearly defined goal that I'm working towards.
Beautiful. So what you can do for yourself and every artist is say, look, you've got this list, and just exhaust the list. Write 20 of them, write 10 of them, whatever you can do to finish that list of what's not working. Then beside that, you're going to write, how would you like it to be instead? Because you can imagine how you'd like it to be instead. You're not responsible to fix it or have the plan. Just imagine how you'd like it to be instead.
And it doesn't even have to be super practical. It's like a brainstorming free association session. You just let your creativity and your imagination rip. Don't edit it. Don't censor it. You're just writing.
So the artists that you talk to, where they're saying that funding is, you know, that finances. What's not working is the finances. Well, how would you like it to be? And they're going to say things like, I would like to have enough money to pay my rent and to donate to charity. I'd like to have enough money to not worry. I'd like to know where, great things. Very few artists are going to give you a dollar amount.
And they might say stuff like, I want to give up waitressing. I want to do this full time. So, get them to be clear about, because people will often tell you what's not working and you say, how would you like it to be instead? And they'll tell you what they don't want. They'll just default. Guide them back, guide them back, guide them back. How do you want it to be?
So the reason that we do that is we need to be engaged in the how we want it to be conversation. It doesn't do any good to reinforce what's not working. So if you're going out with your friends, or you're having a conversation that, artists are talking to you and they just keep going with the how it's not working, that doesn't help anybody. There's no way, they're just digging themselves deeper and deeper and deeper in. What you want is this particular tool that says, okay, let's pause that for a second. We're clear, this is what you don't want. How would you like it instead? Imagine what you'd like it instead. And suddenly there's that positive energy, that imagination springs forth, opens the heart, there's a smile in the eye, and they can move. So Liz has a particular process that she recommends for this exercise that's a awesome daily routine. So walk them through what that looks like every day.
So again, it brings everything back to the physical, the concrete, the physical body and the senses. So if somebody said, I'm tired of working in the supermarket and what I want to do is do my art full time. So then you say to them, it's called a VAC, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. They're the questions you're going to ask them. So you'll say to them, okay, let's imagine that you're working full time. How does it look? Where are you? I've got a studio. There's a spot down by the river that right. Picture yourself in it. How do you look when you're standing in your studio or when you're walking in the morning? Oh, I'm smiling. Great. What's your posture like? It's upright because I'm excited. Cool. Can you see that in your mind's eye how you look? Yeah. So you get them to tease out all the visual indicators that it's happening. There's that studio. Oh, there's somebody else shares the space in the corner because we bounce really well. Can you see that person there? Yeah. Can you see how you smile at each other when you come in and you make your coffee and you come back here? You get them to tease it out. It's like a sliding doors moment. You get them to see it the way they want it to be with detail, because the subconscious mind will accept the detail and start to make it vivid and juicy. You're looking for juice. So you ask them 2 or 3 or 5, how does it look? How are you looking? What can you see? Questions. It's always, this is the visual. Second component is the auditory. And then you say to them, so when you've given up the supermarket and you've got this great studio space that you're sharing and you're working on your, whatever it is that they're doing, you say to them, what would you hear people saying to you? Or what would you hear them saying about you? And they're going to go, gee, I'm really pleased for you, Jim. Great. What else are they saying to you? I love your work. You're so productive now that you're full-time in your studio. What are all the positive things that you can hear people saying to you or about you? So you tease a few of those out. And then what are the things you're saying to yourself when this is the situation? You've got your own studio. I'd be saying to myself, I just love getting up in the morning. I can't wait to get to my studio. I'm really happy with the work I'm producing. So you get to tease out a few more of those. So that's the auditory. The third piece is the kinesthetic. Kinesthetic means feeling. So you say to them, how do you feel when this is your life, or this is what you're doing, or this is your artistic practice? How are you feeling? And they're going to go, well, you know, I wouldn't be worried. It's like, yeah, that, okay, give me the positive of that. I wouldn't be worried means what? Well, I'd be carefree. I'd feel confident, or I'd feel, they'll give you a few of them. And then you pick the one that really feels juicy and you say to them, well, just close your eyes and breathe that feeling in, like connect with it. Feel it. See how you look. Hear what people are saying and what you're saying. Feel what that feeling's like. And then get them to do some breathing. It's like a mini meditation then when they've got that visual, auditory, kinesthetic info, and you let them rest in it. You sort of immerse them in it, or yourself. And then, you know, 2 minutes, a minute, 5 minutes, whatever, time's up. And then you just gently say, well, come back to that, you know, now that you're back in the room with me, but come back to that a few times a day. Reconnect with what that vision, because there's your creative spark. Come back to it. So that's, and so for yourselves, with what's not working, do the same thing. I haven't got a goal, write it out. What is your goal? If you know what it is, Trudy, then, you know, picture yourself accomplishing them, break it into steps, see it, hear it, feel it, what it's like when it's actually happening. It brings it to life. And then when you're excited about something, what happens is you turn down the stress response, which is where we go when it's like, oh no, I'll never, you turn off the stress response, you de-escalate it, you get the energy happening again, which is the opposite of the stress response. And that's where creative juices start to flow. Does that make sense?
Yep. So it's a great thing. And understand that if you keep the conversation going about what you don't want, you'll get what you don't want. If that's where you keep the conversation going, you'll just have more of that because the conversation reinforces that reality. So you want to break that. And if you're going to talk about the art of positivity, the art of positivity is imagining that visually, auditorily, kinesthetically. That's the art of positivity. And be in that. And people, artists, you know, arc back at Liz and I, and they say, well, what good is that? Like, because you're spending the time in here on the negative. What if you spent more time on the positive? What if you use this powerful tool on the positive side of things? What if you spent more time thinking about imagining how you would like it to be instead? That will feel a lot better.
Yeah, because where you put your attention is where things grow.
Yeah. Cool. So that's what we wanted to cover. And the art of positivity means that you have to circuit break. You have to get out of the negativity. And that the best thing you can do is a circuit break. Do something that's completely different. Then the next thing is have a practice of positivity. And the practice of positivity for artists starts with what's not working. No problem, that's fine. So I think if you can do a circuit break, and the next thing is have a practice, have a daily practice or some kind of a practice that's going to use some amount of time and some amount of brain and heart power to be in the positive. And I think the last thing that I would encourage you, since a lot of you work with artists, is to remind the artist how their art impacts other people. And that to say, you've been given this incredible gift to create this work, to have this voice that changes the vibrations in the room. That's a gift. And that gift impacts other people. So if you as curators, if you as arts workers, as you as artists yourself, well, Cynthia, when you drew that labyrinth and you saw people go in it, you created that. That didn't exist on the beach 5 minutes ago. You made that and you saw how it impacted people's lives. So in anything you can do to remind people of how the impact of their art, then you stand in that place of going, there is a purpose. I'm an artist, and I'm an artist whether there's COVID or not. I'm an artist whether there's a grant from OSCO or not. I'm an artist whether there's a beach or not. And it's about coming back to that place where you know that you're an artist. And I think that's one of the greatest tools that you've got for positivity.
Remembering who you are and why you do it.
Yeah. So that was a very fast tour through the art of positivity. We can open it up for the two things that would be good, I think, is because it's about positivity, if everyone shared an aha moment. So in the last 50 minutes, what's something that you went, ah, yes, great, aha. What are the aha moments?
So let's unmute everybody, and unless you're in a noisy background. And a bit like we did at the beginning where we introduced ourselves. Please chip in.
So lead out, Diane, what was an aha moment?
Well, just back to my singing. I just didn't realise that that was the key. Just sing.
Because that's a circuit breaker that puts you into a place of positivity. Both. Tick. Okay, Trudy, what was an aha?
Circuit breakers, so that's useful. That's just to bring it down that simply. I related to the moment where you were talking about just breathe. We've all encountered different versions of that. That's meant to help us, and I think it's just recognizing what lots of people have been under. It takes something a little bit more than that. So that's useful for me to think about circuit breakers.
Yep. For the breathing one of the ones I love is I always tell an artist, I want you to do 3 breaths with me. And I just make them stop. They've been going on and on and on and on about what's not working. And I said, stop. We're going to do something. I want you to do 3 breaths with me. And it's so incredible how the conversation changes after 3 breaths. Any other ahas from all of this?
John Paul, I wanted to say my aha moments. One was the process of doing the circuit break, but also to the process of the VAC, and to see that in a structure like that makes it a lot easier to think about that and start to every day come back to what that VAC was and be thinking about it. And I think that was one of the best things to get out of that negative space, but just knowing that there's quite an easy process to do.
And actually, I'm glad you raised that. Thanks, Rob, because here's the other thing. Over a period of days, or maybe each day, the way you VAC might change. So don't lock it in as this is how I saw it, heard it, felt it yesterday. This is what I have to reproduce. That's not creative. That's rigid. That's dogma. So when you're in the process of VACing, then what comes up and shifts, it's like, whoa, I never thought of that before. Or, oh, that doesn't feel juicy now. And so you flow with it. It's like the creative process. So don't lock it in. It's not as if you're repeating this formula every day. You're feeling into it and connecting with it. Lovely. Thanks, Rob.
The other thing I would add is that we don't have time to go into it, but your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between something you create in a vac situation and the present circumstance, which has you feeling, woe is me. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference. So one of the powerful things about, they tell you to have a gratitude journal or any of those kinds of things, because the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference.
It will accept whatever you tell it. It's like a 5-year-old. So you feed it negative information, it behaves like a misery guts. You start to show it possibilities and positive things, it's going to respond accordingly.
Yep. Any others?
Spending time in the positive.
Yep.
Go, Cynthia.
Oh, thank you. Just to be reminded constantly about that mindfulness techniques that you mentioned, Liz, and thank you again for that, because what we're actually doing is being in the moment and focusing in the moment, because when we do that, we forget all our other issues and what's happening, all that noise outside. I guess that's why I love what I do. Whether I'm creating a labyrinth or walking it, I'm not thinking about anything else. The same as when I facilitate a drum circle. When we're drumming, we're not thinking about the bigger issues or other issues around us. So finding something that we can be passionate about to focus in that moment. And then after you've done that, you feel a lot better as well.
That's gorgeous. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Reese, did you conquer the muting thing? I think you did. How's this been for you? Oh.
Can't find him. Oh, he's trying to unmute. The icon's gone, but we still can't hear you.
Yeah.
There you are.
Sorry about that, Reese. Technology. All right. Any questions? You've got Liz and I for a couple more minutes of questions about positivity, questions about mindfulness, about artists, negative spirals. Go. Okay.
Sounds like you're all pretty content.
That's okay. One of the things in helping an artist acknowledge the impact of their art, because I think one of the things for us as artists, we want to know that it makes a difference. We want to know that it's changing lives, that it's opening hearts, that it's expanding minds. So the question you always ask someone who says, oh, that's great. How did it make you feel? I'm the artist. I don't know. I'm on the inside of the creation. Can you tell me how it made you feel? When you stand in front of my painting, when you walk my labyrinth, when you drum, how does that make you feel? Because we're emotional creatures, artists. So when someone tells us how it changed how they felt, we love that. And that makes us feel valuable, contributing citizens of the world.
Absolutely.
That we're putting something out there that people feel and changes the way they feel. So that's the most important question. So if any artist you work with or yourself, never, ever, ever, ever again ask for feedback. Feedback is a criticism. Well, I think you should have. We don't care. We're an artist. I don't care what your opinion is. I want to know how I impacted you. So it's all about impact. How did it make you feel? What did it make you think? Those are the valuable questions that's going to bring you into that sense of positive, that place of, I'm contributing something valuable. So please, when you curate something and you take an artist's work into that gallery, tell them how it makes you feel, why you chose them. Said, we'd love to have you in this gallery because this stuff makes me feel. That's what we want to hear. As artists, we want to know that somebody felt something, because we feel so much when we create it.
Yeah.
But we're often ignorant of the impact that the work has on someone else. So I thought that was the inspiring thing to leave everybody with, was it's all about the impact.
Thank you.
Anything you want to add, Liz, at the very end?
No, I think that's a perfect note to end on, because that's the reason, that's the purpose. I love it.
Thank you very much, John and Liz, for that. That was really fantastic. I just want to hand over very briefly to Rod Ainsworth, who will just say a few
Rod
things.
Ainsworth.
The beautiful Rod Ainsworth, and then
yes, I just have to be used. Thank you. Just look really briefly. I just wanted to point out that this is the first of a number of these, and Rob will probably talk about these. But it's part of our recovery plan, which we're calling Art as an Act of Optimism. And so, you know, it's exactly this idea that, you know, an artist can imagine the future, an artist can imagine something onto a stage, an artist can imagine something onto a blank canvas. And, you know, we're central to a community's recovery. And that's kind of where this is all coming from. So all of these discussions will lead into our kind of our planning process. That's the idea. So that's why you can see so many staff here, which is fantastic. Great that we've got some community members. We need to get the word out to get more community members and more artists involved. We need to share that love. So there's a bunch of presentations. There's an exhibition. We're assessing some expressions of interest that have come in for artists for some funding through the Regional Arts Development Fund. Look out this week for a number of other opportunities that will come forward in terms of being able to access the Moncrief for artists and arts organisations in a sponsorship capacity next year. So there's other opportunities that are there, and I guess we're trying to use this as a moment to sort of harness the arts community to work towards our community's recovery. So thanks for being the first cabs off the rank, John Paul and Liz, and thanks Robert for organising everything. Thanks Rada for funding it. And I'll hand back to Robert.
Thank you, Rod, and thank you to everyone for attending our webinar today. I would of course like to give our special guest presenters a really big thank you to John Paul, Fischbach and Liz O'Brien. The information we received today, it's been really, really valuable, and I'm sure that our viewers have all taken some really good notes from the session moving forward. I know I have, so thank you very much. Now, before we all go, could you please mark down in your calendars the date for our next webinar? It will be titled Industry Crisis to Recovery, and it will be held on the 20th of July. That is a Monday, and it's at 12:30 p.m, the same as this one. And we will be joined by our guest presenters, Patrick O'Neill and David Bertholtz. So you can jump online today for more information at artsbundaberg.com.au, and you'll be able to check out all the info for that webinar coming up. So once again, thanks to our wonderful co-presenters, and thank you all for participating today. Enjoy your day. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
See you.
Lovely to meet you all.